Good evening, and welcome to the 18th episode of Be Not Afraid, A Catholic Perspective. Tonight's focus is children of divorced parents, and we are very honored to have our three guests join us. Conrad J. Hutterly is an attorney at law. Conrad is a graduate of the Willamette University College of Law and specializes primarily in family law, child custody, and estate planning. Conrad has practiced law in Portland since 2000. S. Elizabeth Limbacher is a licensed marriage and family therapist. A graduate of the University of Rhode Island, Elizabeth has practiced in Oregon for more than 11 years. Her specialties include counseling from a Christian perspective, marriage, couple, individual therapy, parenting through the teen years, launching, and the empty nest. And Janet Kreft, an attorney at law, protecting families since 1984. A graduate of Lewis and Clark Northwestern College of Law, Janet focuses on family law, which includes but is not limited to divorce and separation, custody, parenting, plans, prenuptial agreements, grandparents' rights, and adoption. And here to introduce our guests and tonight's focus is our host, Walt Rollo.
Good evening and welcome back to Focus on America. But that's our old show, isn't it, Scott? Be Not Afraid, A Catholic Perspective. I've been doing too many shows, I guess. I can't remember which one I'm on. But I'd like to say at the outset, as we started this series, we said that not all our topics are going to be Catholic perspective. We're going to be talking about topics that affect people of all faiths. And this is one of them that we're going to be talking about. It's not so much the divorce, but more of what effects it has on the children. And as Nanette said, our guests are Janet and Conrad. Conrad, we may have missed something about how many years you've been practicing.
I was about to say, I'm feeling younger and friskier. Actually, I started practicing law in 1983. And my middle initial is G, not J. But if you want to make me younger, I'm perfectly prepared to accept that.
If I could do that, boy, I'd be making myself younger first. And anything else about yourself that you like?
Well, I think that one of the things that I've had the privilege of being involved with is Judge Susan Spetke from Multnomah County has a list of volunteer attorneys who are appointed to act as advocates for children in high conflict cases, and I'm on that list, and okay. I assume that's part of the reason why I'm here today.
Yeah, I believe so. And Janet, did we get everything right for you?
Perfect. Just
perfect?
Fine.
We didn't make you any younger, as long as we don't make you any older. A little about yourself as far as your practice.
I'm a local. I was raised in Portland. I went through the Portland Public School system. And I started practicing out here in Gresham in 1984. And I have seen changes over time, both in this community and in the Multnomah County Courthouse. And some of the trends, I think we're going to talk about some of that tonight. I like family law. I like all aspects of it. And and I'm pleased to see Conrad here.
Same.
Yeah, two attorneys in the same room that are on the same side. That should be a show in itself. Well, Janet, just from the start of divorce, what are the proceedings that they go through?
Okay. First time someone comes into my office and I meet them, one of the initial questions I ask is, are there minor children involved? And that kind of sets the direction for a lot of the rest of the consultation. And the first thing I get the names and ages of the children, learn a little bit about them, where they go to school, or maybe they're preschool. And I talk to the client in front of me. Is there going to be a custody fight, or can you and your spouse agree as to where the children are going to live? And then we talk about what happens if there is not an agreement or if there's a lot of contention. And I talk about procedures in Multnomah County. And Well, the first thing I ask about is, have you been to counseling? Whenever there's minor kids, if I can strengthen this family relationship somehow, get them back together. There's even divorce counseling to help people deal with this very difficult separation, and I would encourage that always. Frequently they have been to counseling before they come to my office, and if not, I encourage it. And in Multnomah County, as in the counties around here, if there's a conflict, the parents cannot agree, there is mandatory mediation before going to court. A couple of years ago, a trial started in Multnomah County, a custody fight, and the judge casually asked, have you been to mediation? Turns out they hadn't been to mediation. Judge stopped the trial right there and sent them to mediation to see if they can work out their own plan for the kids. Always better. The judges numerous times have said, why would you let me, a perfect stranger, make this decision on your children's lives?
Exactly.
Why don't, if mom and dad can work it out? And often the lawyers have given some guidance in this regard. Before I get too much further, another requirement the counties around here have is parent education. And this is something, I don't know, 10 years old? I don't even know if it's that old. Multnomah County, they're required to go to about a 2.5-hour workshop. I think it's $70 now. Clackamas County, I think it started Clackamas County, and Multnomah County picked up on it.
Parent education, I've got is
Right.
this one you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
it's
Right.
70,
I think,
3.5 hours at $70.
yeah. So they go down, and all the clients like it. They've even required the lawyers to go, and I've gone. And so you go down to the courthouse. They have it every Wednesday morning. Mom and dad, maybe not sitting together in the same room, or maybe just one parent could come at a time. And they get a discussion from people with more of a social work background on the effect of divorce on children and how you can make this easier. For instance, the transitions when they're going back and forth, and the way to act in the home to support the other parent and do what's best for the kids. We get that little attitude adjustment done, and then we'll try to send them to mediation to come up with their own agreement.
Now,
And
is that
it has
something?
kept cases, custody fights out of the courtroom, which
Out of
is
the courtroom,
good.
yeah.
Always good.
Keep it simple, when it comes before the judge.
Yeah. Give the parents some education and push them into making their own decisions. Washington County has, what is it, 20 hours? It's much more involved in Multnomah County, and it's a couple $100. It's more involved. But the Multnomah County program and Clackamas County are really quite good. Everybody likes it. Everybody's required to go.
That's good.
It is good.
And with the mediation, is that something that you would do?
Well, the mediation, the parents would be meeting with a mediator, and I believe the rules specifically state the attorneys are not invited, so it's just the parents and just them.
Okay.
And I think there's something here that I think is kind of fundamental and kind of important for people to appreciate, because I think sometimes when people are looking about retaining counsel on a domestic relations case, that they'll talk to their friends and see who's the meanest, angriest, nastiest person that they could lay hands on. And I think the thing that people need to appreciate is there's only two ways that anything happens in a domestic relations case. The parties agree to it and it's approved by the court, or the court orders it after an evidentiary hearing or some sort of hearing. And so I believe it's extremely important in dealing with colleagues and dealing with the other parties and with that to try to keep as open a line of communication as possible, because if you make things difficult or give in to other people who are trying to make things difficult, then you risk losing 1/2 of your options for resolving anything or
Exactly.
accomplishing anything. And I think the whole purpose of this is to try and accomplish something.
Yeah, it's me.
Most people can settle, but we've all had cases where they can't, and they just have to go to court and have a judge tell them. Usually it doesn't work out.
And that's final.
Well, that's what
yeah, it
that's
is
what they're there for.
final.
But the
Yeah.
idea is what, and I think the thing that people don't appreciate is that some people say, well, they throw up their hands and say, well, we'll just take it to the judge and let the judge decide. Now, I'm sure, my colleague here would agree that the first thing that you do in a domestic relations case is try to make yourself smart, to find out what's going on, get the details, get the information, get all the things together so that you're in a proper position to advise your client. That takes time. That takes effort. It takes a lot of telephone calls. It takes emails. It takes questions. It takes all that other stuff. Well, all the judges that I'm acquainted with in the Tri-County area are very excellent people, are very smart people, very gifted people, but they're not psychic. And to ask them to have people who are unrepresented just pop into court and dump this on them and say, we're going to be here with you for 2 or 3 hours and we expect you to come up with a Solomon-like decision about this whole thing, is asking a lot.
Right.
It has garbage in, garbage out sort of elements to it. The judge in this system is dependent on what people bring to the judge. The arguments, the evidence, the testimony, the witnesses. It's not the responsibility of the judge to produce that. It's the responsibility of the parties and their counsel to do that. And if they can do a good job of that and tell their story, it increases the chances that you're going to get a good and well-reasoned decision.
Well, what would your position be in the proceedings? Is it a child attorney?
Well, the way it would work is this, and I think that this is, again, something that people need to appreciate and understand. In our system, all families are presumed to be doing just fine. Nobody is guilty of a crime. No one has committed any civil wrong,
Right.
and everything is all right with the world, unless and until somebody files a piece of paper alleging that that's no longer the case. And that petition, that complaint, once that's filed, then the court will take a look at that to make sure that this is something that they have the jurisdiction to deal with. And then, when it comes into their hands, it comes into their hands because the parents, the parties, ask the court. They filed something. They're the ones that approach the court and put it in their hands. And one of the things that the court can do, but can only do under certain circumstances, is appoint an attorney to represent the children. That can only happen if the child writes something out and sends it to the judge. And if that happens, then the judge is required to appoint an attorney, for the child. Or the parties decide that getting an attorney for the child would be a good thing to do. And then there would be an order issued by the judge, and I get on the phone and see if I'm interested in taking it or somebody else on the list is interested in taking it.
And now you'd just be dealing with the child then, is that correct?
Not exactly. Since I'm representing the child, I would also be dealing with the other counsel for the parents.
Oh, okay.
Or the parents themselves if they don't have counsel. And my approach to this whole thing is I like to meet with the child as soon as possible, and I ask some open-ended questions of them. Questions that really don't require them to side one way or the other with one parent or the other. And invite them to say about things that they enjoy doing with mom, things they enjoy doing with dad, things they don't like doing with mom, don't like doing with dad. Are you afraid of anything? Are you worried about anything right now? What things do you enjoy doing? What things do you not like doing? Talk about school. Talk about, give them an opportunity to express fears and concerns that they might have without slanting it one way or the other.
Right.
And then, when you get that together with the child's permission, I prepare a little letter saying what I'm hearing here. And what you want to hear is the child is talking about fears and concerns and things that any child that age would be talking about. I got a math test coming up and I'm scared to death how I'm going to do. I'm going to a 7th grade dance and I'm afraid nobody's going to pay any attention to me. If they're worried about things that other kids their age are worried about, I got best friends moving out of town. Those are the things to worry about. Those are good things to hear. And you get concerned when the kids are telling you things like, I'm really worried about how mom's trial, hearing with dad is going to turn out. Or I'm really worried about this, or I'm really worried about that, that has to do with, mom and dad's problems. Because I think one of the fundamental things is that I think that my clients, when I'm representing children, have an absolute right to their own problems. They're not here to solve the parents' problems. They're not here to solve the court's problems. They're not here to solve my problems. We're here as adults to solve their problems. And so I think one of the things that can be useful is when you can develop some problems maybe that the children are having and put them on the table that maybe hasn't been part of the discussion, and get people to focus on those sorts of things. But ultimately what you're trying to do is to produce some facts, produce some information. And then what I typically do is after I send out the letter, I invite the parents to my office for some discussion, and I throw out some ideas on how we might settle this, consistent with what I've learned. And in a lot of the cases I deal with, it is one parent trying to get parenting time from the other parent, and it's not happening. Mm-hmm. And the parent who's not getting the parenting time assumes that it is the custodial parent who has somehow poisoned the mind of the children, or is keeping the children away from them, or something like that is happening. And it can be very beneficial to talk to the children, see what's going on with them. And in many cases, what will happen is that there'll be a recommendation that maybe the non-custodial parent who's having trouble getting parenting time would have some counseling directly with the children, so that the non-custodial parent who's having problems with parenting time and the children, with the assistance of a counselor, can speak directly to each other. And we get the custodial parent out from the middle, off the hook, and we can focus on where the problems, in many cases, really are.
Okay. Now, Janet, one of the questions I was asked in our prior conversations was, when the parents go in, say they want to have a divorce, have they considered what is going to happen to their children, or is it's all about me and the children come into the picture later on?
When they come into my office, well, I ask them directly within 2 minutes. I think they have. I'm not sure they've made the deepest decision, but I would say they have. Typically, they may not be thinking very deeply about it, and they haven't thought of various ramifications of who's going to live where and where the schooling is. And I start bringing up these things. How's he going to get to school if he lives at your house? Or what's going to happen here? So we explore that. And sometimes I'm impressed, and sometimes I think they could have done a lot more deeper thinking as the child's needs. Definitely. All right. Definitely.
Go ahead.
The thing is that, and I think this is something also that people need to appreciate, is that prior to when I was in high school, back with Barney Rubble and Fred Flintstone and those guys, the legal model for a marriage was a contract. And in order to get out of a marriage, someone had to allege that somebody had breached the contract. And after the 1970s, so there was a determination that perhaps a better legal model for a marriage was a partnership.
Okay, can we hold that thought for a second?
Sure.
We're going to take a break right now, and we will be back just a few seconds.
Hi, I'm Christina, and I'm celebrating my 10th birthday today, or at least would have been if my mother didn't take away my life by having an abortion. Why, Mom?
And welcome back. We've been running that little PSA on abortion for about a year now. So Christine would have been probably about a year or 11 years old now. As I said in many times, give life, don't take it away. Well, comrade, before your break, we're
What I was trying to explain is that under the current law, the legal model for a marriage is a partnership as opposed to a contract. And under partnership law, a partner can leave a partnership anytime they feel like it. Under Oregon law, all they have to do is allege that there are irreconcilable differences leading to the irremediable breakdown of the marriage, and nobody will ask them, the party that's alleging that, what they meant by that. And so, although it takes two people to make a marriage, a partnership, it only takes one person to make a divorce, regardless how the other person may feel about it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be a difficult thing to sort through. But as a practical matter, from a legal standpoint, if one party is adamant that the marriage is over and the marriage must be dissolved, that's pretty much all she wrote.
And Oregon is a no-fault state?
All of them are.
All of them
All
are?
of them are. All of them are. Since the early 70s. Illinois was the last one, yeah.
I thought maybe New York.
No. All
really?
50
Okay.
states. 50
Sorry.
states, no fault.
So you just
Right.
walk in and
Say
my fault,
irreconcilable
your fault,
differences.
nobody's fault. It's going to
Irreconcilable
happen.
difference, yeah.
And following the model of a partnership. So in fact, that's what it's called. It's a dissolution. You have a dissolution of a partnership, you have a dissolution of a marriage.
That's saying
wanna
that.
talk about
Has it gotten increased over the years, the amount of divorces?
I don't know. I mean, there are people having kids outside of not getting married. People
Right.
not getting married, certainly. Shall I talk about joint custody?
Yeah.
All right. People sometimes have the idea that Oregon's a state in which a child can wake up on like his 12th birthday or 14th birthday and choose what parent they wish to live with. Oregon is not one of those states. There are a few around, and some foreign countries. Oregon is not one of those states. One increasing, if I can say fad almost, is the concept of joint custody, which I believe began in California about probably in the 70s, I think. And we have it in Oregon. No judge can award joint custody in Oregon. The parties can agree outside the courtroom in one of the agreements that Conrad was referring to. And the judge will affirm that agreement virtually all the time. Might be a few odd times when they wouldn't. But then the issue is, and I have clients come in and ask me about this, and I say, well, have you talked to the child's father? What do you mean by joint custody? What do you mean by custody? Custody is who makes the decisions on the child's life. And what are these big decisions? The big ones. Where does the child live? What school do they go to? What church? What doctor? What babysitter? These kinds of things. And, if you haven't been able to make those decisions when you're living in the same house, you got to think long and hard, can we make them when we're living in two different houses? They think they can. It's good if they can. And then the idea is, okay, there's joint legal custody. Where's the child going to live? What's physical custody? Some people think that joint custody means week here with dad, week with mom. Well, maybe it does. And we talk about the ramifications of that. And frankly, in my practice, based on what I've seen, based on what I've read, I discourage joint custody for small kids. There's some people that swear by it. If they're 14, 16 years old, it's another matter. But the smaller they are, they need stability. I've had parents come to me with ideas about where the child's going to be, week with dad, week with mom, and their child's 3 years old, and every other Wednesday will change and da-da-da. And I've had one parent couldn't even remember what the custodial arrangements were herself. And if she can't remember it, can the 6-year-old? I've had people come up with ideas on joint custody in this division of physical custody that frankly, and I've looked them straight in the eye, and I said, I wouldn't put a dog in that arrangement. And that's my personal opinion. I think that lots of times joint custody is to solve a problem between the parents. It may not be best for the child, so think long and hard 12 and older, 14, high school kids, that may work out. Little ones, I discourage it. And they still insist sometimes. So the client makes the decision. I don't make the decision.
If I could add just a few things, those are very good thoughts about that. And just to say that I think that she raised a point that is missed. You will see something in the tabloid that will say some Hollywood starlet or something is involved in a divorce and did not get sole custody of the child, and the headline will say she lost the child. And the point, when you hear the word custody, you should think of authority, decision-making authority. And this is something that's important to understand with regards to these three concepts, is that during the marriage, the parents each have a bundle of parental authority, and they're exactly the same size, and they're mutually exclusive. So that if the kid wants to go to summer camp and presents the permission slip to one parent and one parent signs it, that's all it takes, just one parent's signature. And when you have a sole custody arrangement, it doesn't mean that the party that's been awarded sole custody now has more parental authority. They have the same amount of decision-making authority that they had before. It's just that for purposes of reducing conflict and all sorts of other things, the non-custodial parent's decision-making authority has been reduced and defined to particular circumstances.
Oh, okay.
Now, some people seem to think that joint custody is exactly the same situation that you had during the marriage, and it isn't. Joint custody means that with regards to these important decisions that she was talking about, both parents have to agree on all of them. Neither one of them has the authority to act on their own. And that's why it becomes incredibly difficult and important to define just exactly what it is you're talking about with joint custody, because both parents may have decidedly different ideas about it, and that's something that needs to be spelled out and worked out. And a lot of people, I can't tell you how many times people come in and said, well, I and the other parent want joint custody, so we each get to see the child 50-50. Again, custody hasn't anything to do with parenting time or access to the child. It has to do with authority. That's what it's about. Parenting time is something totally separate. And there are people with joint custody arrangements that have parenting time that's very similar to what a lot of people with sole custody have. And there are some people with sole custody arrangements where they have 50-50 parenting time. It's a completely separate issue. And in both cases, the fundamental precepts of the law is that the decisions have to be made based on what's in the best interests of the child.
I will say that.
Can we hold it at that, in the best interest of the child? That's a subject I want to talk about. But like commercial television, we have commercials.
Okay.
So we'll take a break right now, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Well, hello and welcome to Sisters of the Road. Sisters of the Road has been a part of Old Town Chinatown, Portland for about 32 years. Most folks know us for our cafe. Our cafe welcomes people who are experiencing homelessness and poverty, and we ask folks to pay $1.25 for a meal, and they can pay for that with cash or using food stamps, and they can also barter work for a meal. So someone can wash windows or sweep outside for 15 minutes, and that's enough to earn a great meal that's often made with locally sourced food, really nutritious and delicious. So that's one piece of what we do, and we also have a systemic change program that's really central to our work as well. And in that program, folks who are experiencing homelessness and poverty learn skills that help them take their thoughts and their solutions to policymakers and to the larger community. So they learn to shoot films through our Empowered Voices Media project. They learn to do public speaking and to do advocacy work and community organizing. And that's all part of our systemic change program and also our Dorothy Day Community School. So we welcome folks from all over the community to come join us at Sisters of the Road. We're based in nonviolence and gentle personalism, and that informs how we work together and the friendships that we make and the deep relationships that are formed here. Folks, everyone is welcome to join us, and we do hope that everyone comes down to the cafe and has lunch, gets to know the folks who work here, all of us from barter workers to volunteers to staff. So please come down and join us sometime, and you can find us on the web at www.sistersoftheroad.org. Thanks so much.
Oh,
To say the
I've
least.
never forgotten. I think I was in law school when I heard this. I wasn't practicing yet. And I met this man who had been living in a house in, I think it was Eastmoreland. Nice house. And he and his wife had 2 children, elementary school age, and he and his wife weren't getting along, decided they'd split. And they said, you know, it's our divorce, it's not the kids. The kids will stay in the house, and the adults would rent an apartment, and they would go week on, week off, moving back and forth, packing their clothes, going to the apartment, coming back, and the children would stay stable. Well, after 1 month, the adults couldn't take it. And they did not continue that arrangement anymore. And I think of that sometimes when people want to put a very vulnerable, helpless child who has no control over their life into that arrangement. I just don't think it's healthy. That was my story, anyway.
When you told me about that, I can just imagine, you know, the kids walking over from here to here and say, am I supposed to be living here? And where do you live at? Oh, I live at, let's see, what week is it?
I know.
What time is it? I'll tell you where I live at. Yeah. Well, that's the best interest of the children. What does that mean, and what do the courts do to protect the children?
Well, the statute relating to custody, the Oregon Revised Statute, has kind of a Christmas tree sort of approach. There are all these limbs, and each one of the elements is sort of an ornament on the tree, and they sort of hang there. And the idea is that you're supposed to consider all of these elements, collectively in some way to reach a decision. But my understanding from the discussions I've had and the things that I've heard at continuing legal education programs is that the ornament on the tree that the judges consider most seriously is who is the parent who's been the primary caregiver. It's presumed that the parents are good parents unless they hear otherwise. It's presumed that they love and care about their children unless they hear otherwise. These are things that are presumed. What we're trying to do is to figure out what kind of living arrangement should continue for this child. And I think one judge I heard put it best. It said, when you folks were living together and loved each other, and caring for your children was the most important thing in the whole wide world, raising children is work. Which one of the 2 of you was primarily given the job of raising the children? Okay, who is the primary caregiver for the children? And if that's the decision that you guys made under those circumstances, why should I question it? If that's the decision you guys made, why should I second guess it? Mm-hmm. Unless something has happened since then that would call that decision into question, or it's no longer relevant or no longer a good one. I think to a large extent they're looking at who's the one who's been the primary caregiver. And at times now that can be difficult because, and this is good news, in many cases both parents are actively involved in caring for the children. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. But that's what the court is looking at. They're not, these people are not child development experts. They're lawyers, they're people in black robes. And I think that they may not feel comfortable deciding who's the best parent unless some expert comes in to advise them.
Tells them why.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they feel more comfortable looking at the situation and say, I think this is the parent who's been primarily responsible for caring for these kids. And I think that if I have to make a choice, then that's the basis I'm going to make that decision on.
Fantastic. Well, in closing, Janet, would you like to add anything about that on the?
Oh, I think it's so tough. I I would just encourage you to work at your marriage and go to counseling, and churches are great support groups. And, lawyers, see the lawyer last. Try everything else first. Stability is worth it. And I think these are tough times, a lot of challenging things going on because of the economy.
Right.
And we all have to just support our families and appreciate one another and live as good as we can.
Well, Conrad, Janet, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
You put
Thank
a
you.
lot of information out there, a lot that I didn't know, which is the case a lot of times. But again, I mean, getting this message out to the people is so important. And that's one of the nice things about community television, that we can get subjects out that the commercial television, well, they could, but I don't think they will. So thank you again. And when we come back,
My pleasure.
we are going to be joined by Elizabeth Limbacher, and we're going to be talking about some of the effects on the children after the divorce. So stay tuned. And joining me now is Elizabeth Limbacher, who is a counselor in this area. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You sat in our audience for a while,
Very interesting discussion.
wasn't it, though? Well, let's start. What should parents tell their children about a divorce, possible divorce that's coming up?
That's a really hard one because there's what the parents can tell the child, and then there's what the child decides about what's happening, I think. I think the best thing parents can do is really emphasize the fact that they love the child. It's not the child's fault that there's a divorce, because that is usually what the children will decide.
That it's their fault.
That it's my fault. I must have done something to cause this. If I'd have been a better child, if I'd followed the rules, if I would have cleaned my room last Thursday like my mom wanted me to, they wouldn't be getting a divorce today. So kids don't understand, but the best thing parents can do is really emphasize, we love you, it's not your fault, this is something that we're going through that we can't.
Should they sugarcoat it at all, or should I just come out and say,
Yeah.
give the facts?
Here's the rule of thumb I oftentimes offer to parents. No matter what age the child is, you tell them the truth. You don't have to tell them all the truth. You have to tell them whatever part of the truth at an age-appropriate level that they need and that they can understand. So, especially with really young children, you answer their questions about it. You don't have to elaborate. Kids want, they want their immediate question answered in a truthful way, but you don't have to elaborate on it. So, mommy and daddy are getting a divorce. What does divorce mean? It means we're not going to live together anymore. Why aren't we going to do that? Well, mommy and daddy can't, I don't know what they would say. We can't live together very well anymore, but that doesn't mean that we don't love you. We do. And if kids' curiosity is satisfied at that point, you stop talking at that point. So you give them some amount of truth. So every time they ask questions throughout the years as they get older, you're only ever adding to the truth that you've already given them, never having to contradict what you've said before.
Exactly, yeah. Now, when you tell the child what's going on, that they're getting a divorce, and they don't react to it, they have to, okay, get a divorce. Is that a sign that is not good?
I don't know. Would it mean that the kid doesn't understand what divorce means? I think it would depend on how old the child was.
Okay.
Very young children, of course, they wouldn't know what that means. They may know that they're, if they're school age or something, they may know that some of their classmates' parents got a divorce, but they may not know what the word means or the implication means. They may understand that means that I'm going to live in two different places, or mommy and daddy aren't going to live together, but I don't know what that means. Obviously, older children understand better what that means.
Yeah,
But then there's the knowing it and there's the living it, and those are two different things.
exactly. You know, it's reading something or seeing something read to you or told to you, but then when you actually go out there and do it, it's totally different.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, should parents, I would think, that they should stay away from third degreeing,
Third degree.
giving a third degree to, you know, what did your father do and what
Oh
did
my
your
goodness,
mother
yes. That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely, keeping that, whatever's happening between the parents, as best you can, keep it between the parents and never let the kid see that. But that's really hard for a lot of parents because they're angry. I mean, people don't get divorced because they love each other. They get divorced
Exactly.
because they don't love each other anymore, or because something's happened that's caused them to be hurt or angry. And when we don't have the direct access to the person we're angry at to tell them, I'm angry at you, we use a surrogate. And sometimes that's the kids. A lot of times that's the kids.
That's right.
So they take it out on the kids.
Now, especially in, I guess, you know, in the Catholic religion where divorce is not an option.
Right.
A lot of times they would stay together just because of religion.
Right.
Do you still see that happening now, or should they stay together simply because?
I wish I saw a little bit more of that mindset that there's something here worth preserving, that there's something sacred and special about a marriage, especially when there's children there, that's worth sticking together. I would hope, of course, that they would work to make it a good relationship. I know that's not always possible, but the option to get a divorce, I think, is too easy in our society. And there's also a sense of me first, that somehow our own individual happiness is more important than the collective happiness of a family, or even the collective happiness of our children. Somehow we're willing to sacrifice the mental health, the stability of our children, so that, you know, I can be happy in the moment.
And what is some of the major things, or not some of the things that parents and children have come to you about? What are some of the difficulties that they've had?
I see a lot of drug use. When couples come in for counseling, some of the first questions I ask them, and I ask them these questions because it's frequently the case: is there drug use? Is there alcohol use? Is there infidelity? Is there addictions of any kind? Pornography addiction is huge, huge.
Oh, really?
In families. I would think epidemic. Some colleagues and I did a casual study once, and we surveyed all our clients and found, I think it was something like 82% of our clients had porn addictions. So it's big, and this is the kind of stuff that gets into marriages that makes it difficult to be in the marriage. You're not dealing with the person usually that you married. You're dealing with this third leg, as it were, whatever sort of addiction or infidelity has gotten into the marriage.
Now, is there any age where it's a little easier to function or to get used to a divorce?
I recently read an article that said divorce negatively impacts even adults when an adult's parent gets divorced. So maybe they're 20, maybe they're 30 years old, and their parents get a divorce. That even can negatively affect a person, and they have to go through this grief process. And there's something almost on a deep level when the union that produced you dissolves. It's a fundamental rift in your sense of being and security in the world, it seems like.
Okay.
Whether you're a child or an adult when that happens.
And you are a child of divorced parents.
I am.
You look like you've done pretty good.
One would hope.
So what was, you've seen the problems.
Yeah.
We're going to have a break right now. But when we come back, we want to talk about, just the situation that you were in.
Okay.
And versus the bad situations. So when we come back, that's what we're going to be talking about, and I will see you in just a minute. We were going to talk about your experience as a divorced, or a child of divorced parents. How old were you? And
When my mother and father divorced, I was 3 years old.
oh, wow.
And my mother remarried and subsequently divorced then as well when I was 9 years old. So
You kind of got the double whammy.
yeah, and it's tough. I remember when I was 3, like I've read in studies, I've experienced with my clients, for me it was true too. At 3 years old, I thought it was my fault.
Really?
I
That
did.
young?
Yep, I thought it was my fault. If I could have, I remember thinking there must be something I can do to make this not be real, that I have some bearing on my parents' divorce. And that's really tough, and kids don't understand, of course, that it's not their fault. I have a lot of people tell me too that they think that they're helping the children and protecting the children from an unhappy marriage by getting divorced, but the kids don't see it that way. That for a child, it's such a life-changing experience with some really profound consequences. Sometimes I think it's the better thing to do, especially if there's violence or safety issues going on in the home. Of course, I would absolutely be for a separation, possibly a divorce.
Now, is this a long, everlasting, as far as thinking, as you were saying that you felt it was your fault, even at 3 years old?
The research shows it is. The research shows that kids, almost no matter what age they are when it happens, kids who come through divorce have long-reaching effects even into adulthood. Their sense of safety in the world, their ability to trust. I mean, if you think about, for a child, their parents, their home, that union that brought them into being is their world, their rock, their foundation. And if that can be severed, if that can be dissolved, then what else in their life can be dissolved?
Yeah.
What else can you stand on? What else can you rely on? There isn't anything. And so it leaves you with a sense of, I can't trust that this or that or whatever it is, especially relationships, are going to last, that it's something I can rely on and count on and trust. So there's deep, deep wounds that carry on even into adulthood. You see them playing out in relationships.
Have you seen that children of divorced parents are also leaning towards, they end up divorce? When they grow up, they get married and...
Yeah, I do. I don't know what the statistics are on it, but I think probably we could just look at the increased rate of divorce over time, probably from the 60s and 70s when divorce really became prominent, and see that, what am I, the first, second generation of divorces, right?
Yeah.
So I think because it leaves us with this sense that, well, if I'm not happy in this relationship, then I can just get a divorce. And I don't trust that we're going to make it through because there's nothing that is indissoluble. So
well, you had 2 step-parents?
I had a stepfather.
Stepfather. And how was that?
There was some challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some challenges there. He had 2 children of his own that were the same age as myself and my brother, and I remember my mother talking about trying to make decisions for that blended family. They didn't live with us all the time, but when they did live with us, there was sort of this, I don't know if you'd call it a loyalty war, just each parent trying to make good decisions for their own children, and that becomes difficult.
Did you go to their house, or was
I
there
had
a joint-
visitation with my father at the time.
And was he remarried?
No,
Okay.
no.
Because I was wondering, with
Yeah.
stepchildren coming into another
Yeah.
person's house.
I think that's something that I think when parents are getting a divorce, I think that's something they don't think through about how much control they're going to lose by getting divorced over their children and the experience their children have. Because when you're ending up when your child has now 2 separate homes, you can't have any say over what television programs they watch, what games they play, what video games they watch over there. You have so little control about who they're exposed to or who they're not exposed to. It frequently happens that when a divorce happens, the parents may start dating again. Well, now you have these kids with these adults coming in and out of their lives, and sometimes it's like a revolving door, and
no stability at all.
No stability and no predictability, and that's what kids need, so they can venture out. If they have a home base that's safe and secure and they can rely on it, they have more freedom then to go out in the world and experience things. But when there is no safe place, then they can't explore safely. And you get step parents in there, and what if you don't like the partner your ex-spouse chooses that your child is subjected to now, on whatever basis they have visitation there? There's nothing you can do about it. And that's pretty scary sometimes, because those second, or even if they don't get married, but the partners your ex-spouse brings in may not be a great partner, may not be a great parent, may have their own kids with their own agenda, and maybe they don't even like your child. And now you have to send your child over to that house however often to be with somebody who doesn't even like them. That's tough. And
I can imagine. And do you see going back into court to readjust the visitation where the child is saying, I'm getting along with this parent a lot better?
Yeah.
He lets me, my mom lets me on a computer for
right.
a number of hours. My dad doesn't let me do anything. Do
Yeah.
you see that? And do they have a choice?
Well, as your earlier guests were saying, in Oregon, not really, as I understand it, they don't. What I've heard is that the older a child gets, the more their opinion may be considered, but they don't get to make the choice. And kids are, they may, as you said, say, I like the rules at mom's house better than the rules at dad's house, and they can get pretty good at manipulating that. So they'll go back and forth. Whichever thing they think they want to get away with is the parents' house they'll stay at for whatever amount of time. And bravo for them for working out their own life there. Their parents have torn their life apart, and they're going to survive it the best they can. And if that means they have to manipulate the situation, sometimes they do.
And my parents never divorced, but I did learn how to manipulate.
I think all kids do.
Yeah, go ask your mom. Well, Dad said it's okay, but as long as it's okay with you.
Yes, that happens in our household too.
Yeah. No,
And
Dad
my
didn't
kids
say
are
that.
my kids are young, and they've already figured that one out.
That's good. Well, in closing minutes, what else could you add? Is there anything else you'd like to bring up?
I think I would echo Janet's sentiments early. Get help if your marriage is on the rocks. do what you can to save your marriage, especially if you've got children. It's not something to throw away. It's not just you that needs to be considered. You have to consider those children, you have to consider the family. It's far-reaching decision, divorce, and very rarely does it come without consequences.
Yeah, divorce is permanent.
Yeah.
In most cases. I guess some people do get remarried, but
They do. But the damage still comes even if they get remarried, because there was a divorce in there. So get counseling at the first sign of trouble. Don't wait.
Well, Elizabeth, I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I'd like to close with this. His name was Johnny, and he was about to turn 18 years old. So he went to his dad. He said, you know, Dad, it's going to be my 18th birthday next month. Would it be nice if I got a new car? You know, his dad says, well, yeah, I guess you're going off to college and you can use that and all. But I'd like you to do 3 things for the next month. I'd like you to read the Bible for 10 minutes a day, get a haircut, and take those earrings out of your pierced earrings out. Well, Johnny read the Bible every day religiously for 10 minutes. And about 3 weeks later, he goes to his dad. He says, Dad, it's going to be a month now. Don't you think it's time that we go and look at a couple cars? He says, well, yeah, I guess it is time, but, you know, we did have 3 requirements here. You know, you're supposed to read the Bible for 10 minutes a day. Oh, Dad, I've been doing that every day. Now, what about those pierced earrings? He reaches up and he takes them out. He says, you'll never see them again. Okay, well, we got the hair. You still haven't gotten a haircut. Well, you see, Dad, the Bible you gave me had pictures in it. It had pictures of Jesus. And he had long hair. Oh, you're right, Johnny, he did have long hair. But if you read a little further, you realize he walked everywhere he went. I'd like you all, thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank my crew, my fantastic crew. We got some new members tonight. We got to show off great. And just as a reminder, they say our children are our future. Well, I say they're our present. And if we don't take care of them now, what kind of future will they have? I'm Walt Rollo. Thank you for watching, and God love you.